everybody, and welcome to another new episode of the Online Warriors podcast. And I'm Nerdbomber.
And I'm Techtic.
And we don't have a legal with us, which means it's...
Techtic.
Oh. Clearly we're on the same page, but it's date night. You guys know it. You guys love it. Techtic and Nerdbomber date night brings you all the nerdy goodness.
But no necking, as we always like to preface. This is going to be a PG episode.
We have a ton of really great topics to talk about this week. We have some Xbox Game Pass changes. We have two really great trailers, one in the MCU and the other a sequel of at this point, it's a classic movie, I guess. That makes me feel super old, but a classic movie getting a sequel. Techtic, what would you like to start with first?
I think the sequel would probably be the most interesting. There's a lot covered there and a lot to say.
All right, so if you guys haven't heard yet, the Russell Crowe famous classic movie Gladiator is getting a sequel called Gladiator II, starring Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal in the two starring roles. And I think, who else is in this movie? Denzel Washington is in it. I believe Connie Nielsen is in it, the mother of Lucius. Joseph Quinn is in it, who, if you guys aren't familiar, Joseph Quinn was most recently seen in A Quiet Place, Day One, but also in Stranger Things. So if you didn't recognize him in the trailer, yeah, he looked completely wild.
Picture him blonde and very pasty. That was him.
Yeah, very, very pasty. So essentially, the plot of this movie is Paul Mescal is playing Lucius Verus, who is the former heir to the Roman Empire, but he was presumed to be dead until Pedro Pascal, who plays Marcus Acacius, finds him and enslaves him, essentially. So Paul Mescal's character finds himself, in the Colosseum, basically back in the setting of the initial Gladiator movie, and his whole goal is to take down the new Roman emperor and, take back his life. And you see a lot of crazy things happen. They fight a rhino at one point in the trailer. It looks like there's a war going on outside of the Colosseum. Denzel Washington is planning to use him as the person who will take down the Roman Empire.
That's what's interesting about it. So you said it's his goal. It's really, he's just an angry person, and it's Denzel Washington's character that plans to use him as a pawn to kind of move into power. And that's I think much better to have this kind of bat out of hell just wrecking shit because he has some sort of amnesia is kind of cool. And then the other thing that I want to mention about this plot and why it's absolutely fascinating to me, in a world of reboots and remakes and redos, they had every opportunity to just make Gladiator 1. The fact that they're making a sequel and they're tying it to the first one, thank freaking goodness. I am so tired of reboots, and it is nice to see a sequel, and it's nice to see them getting behind a sequel. A lot of the times you think, oh, it's just a sequel, but this is they're all in. Yes, it's the second movie, but they're trying to make it just as good, if not better, as the first, and thank you, Hollywood. This is refreshing.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned, we've seen a lot of reboots and sequels lately, but because we haven't seen a ton of historical, and by historical, I mean pre the advent of guns type movies in a long time, I feel like this feels relatively refreshing, even though it is a sequel. So I'm pretty stoked about it.
And the other thing that I really liked about it is the casting of Paul Mescal. One,
you're about to say that he's new and undiscovered, I feel like, and that is not true, but okay, continue.
One, you have a Pascal and a Mescal, so okay. It's literally we're going through different units. I know Pascals and Mescals are not, Pascals are a unit, but Mescals are not, but they should be. They absolutely should be. And I like that they're together in a movie. And two, yes, Paul Mescal has been in a number of different movies, but none of them have been super, super front line. And to be on a franchise like Gladiator is exciting because yes, he's been around, but he's not the same three faces that you see everywhere, like Tom Holland, because give him a break. Give Tom Holland a break and like cast other people. And this was a good choice. I'm very excited about this casting.
I have a few comments because Illegal's not here, so I have to latch onto somebody to be a little bit contrarian too. So first of all, Normal People was huge. Like you didn't watch the show. I watched the show because I read the book and I didn't really think that you would be interested in it, but Normal People is what launched Daisy Edgar Jones, who I know you know more. She's in Twisters. She was in Where the Crawdads Sing. She was in that movie with the guy who's also in Marvel movies. And he was like a cannibal person. So I know you know who that is, but that is the series that launched both of them to fame. So Normal People is a big deal. And I think he even won like a BAFTA and stuff for that. But he's also done stuff in plays and was in All of Us Strangers, which I haven't watched but has been notably considered to be very good and I believe is on Hulu. So it's not like he's a nobody. My other comment, but I do agree this is a really good casting, but he's not a nobody.
I didn't say nobody. You're saying that.
And also, I don't think Tom Holland, like you called him out specifically as being cast and everything. I don't think that's true. Like, what has Tom Holland been in lately? Realistically, you're seeing him in Spider-Man, Uncharted, and he did a few like indie like streaming movies. But like it's not like he's in everything.
Fair. That's fair.
That said, Tom Holland would absolutely not work for this role just because he's a scrawny guy and that like it doesn't.
Gotta have people with some Roman features. You know who would have been a really good casting? Me.
Again, I just said Tom Holland probably wouldn't work because he was a little bit of a scrawny guy. So I don't want to reiterate that point, but I don't know if Techtic would work because a little bit of a scrawny boy.
I like to think I'm akin to Bruce Banner. If I just like get a little angry, I get
swole.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you mentioned, I'm excited that they tied this back and like linked the main character. He's like the grandson of the Roman Empire in the first movie. Do you plan on seeing this when this comes out? Which it will be coming out November 15th in the United Kingdom, November 22nd if you are in the United States.
So my wife isn't a big action movie buff, so I definitely am interested in watching it, but I'd have to get her on board.
I like historical, semi-realistic action movies, and I feel like aside from some things that I'm a little bit dubious about, like I think at one point the trailer showed that they might have filled the Colosseum with like water, and I don't know the historical accuracy of that, but I believe like rhinos and crazy
they were
animals
actually able to flood the Colosseum.
Did they do that?
Yeah, I did a report on the Colosseum back in the day.
So like I don't know, I think this isn't like when I say I don't really love action movies, I'm thinking your things like Fast and Furious, which don't get me wrong, I enjoy a good Fast and Furious movie, but like lately they're like driving muscle cars into space or something, and things that are just like really outworldly, I'm not really feeling lately. But because this is a historically semi-accurate movie, like this type of action doesn't bother me. So I'm actually really interested in seeing this because it's just different from what we've been getting a lot of lately.
You heard it here first, folks. She's gonna watch an action movie. Which means I'm going to watch an action movie. You
say that I don't watch action movies. Meanwhile, I'm the one that's like, let's go see Twisters. And you don't want to see Twisters.
It's not an action movie.
That is totally an action movie. They're driving into a tornado. Would you not consider a tornado to be action-packed?
Yeah, but it's like, so like Twisters, as far as action movies go, it's like, hey, that building's on fire. I'm going to go inside of it. You could not. Or you cannot. That's my stance. Whereas this movie is like, this person was put in this situation. They have to fight for their freedom. That is an action movie.
I don't know if I agree with that classification of what an action movie is. I really don't. Yeah, I'm going to say that Twisters is an action movie for sure. I'm actually going to fact check this because I feel like the internet is going to agree with me.
They're going to call it action, but I'm going to call it dumb.
Twisters genre. Going through the Google right now, action, adventure, thriller. I would also say that A Quiet Place Day One was like borderline action movie as well. There were a lot of quiet moments, pun intended, in that movie, but there was also a lot of action when there's aliens grabbing people. Like, I think you're just thinking action like pew pew, action man, gotta see it. that's not how I classify an action movie. I like action movies. Also, not to twist your arm, another pun intended, but we're definitely seeing twisters. It got a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. And we know I don't agree with the critic score, but the audiences are saying it's not out yet. So I can't tell you what the audience are saying.
That's because everyone likes Glenn Powell. He's just a likable guy.
It's because Twisters, the original movie, was really good.
Okay.
You haven't seen that one. I want to go see a double feature where we can watch both. We're going to do it. Do you have any other comments about Gladiator II?
No, just great casting, great premise, and I'm excited to see the franchise moving forward.
All right, so the next one, do you want to move forward with the other movie trailer that we have in our docket, keep it like movie heavy in the front, or do you want to do a movie sandwich and do a movie game movie?
Let's do a movie sandwich.
All right, so in the world of games, as you guys know, I am a huge fan of Xbox Game Pass. I'm not a paid advertiser for Xbox Game Pass. I have every console under the sun. I have a Steam Deck, Switch, PS5, Xbox, PC, you name it, I have it. I'm still rocking Game Boys and DSs out here. However, I do like Game Pass just because it is a good value to the consumer, but that may be changing. As you guys know, one of the big marketing pitches for Xbox Game Pass is that any Microsoft game will release day and date on Game Pass. And that has been the case until now. So Microsoft announced a bunch of changes to both the pricing and the structure of the Game Pass service. So Game Pass Ultimate will be going up in price to almost $20 a month, which it has been steadily increasing over the years, but this is definitely like the highest that we've seen. And effective immediately, Xbox Game Pass for console, which was the cheaper version of Game Pass for console specifically, will no longer be available for new subscribers. If you already have that tier of subscription, you can continue to use it. But basically, once you run out of that subscription tier or you cancel, you can't get it back. You will, not be able to have that anymore. Then they will introduce a new tier called Xbox Game Pass Standard, which will basically be replacing the non-ultimate version for console. And I know this is super confusing. They've made this very convoluted. But essentially, this is a cheaper $14.99 a month plan, but it won't include day one releases. They haven't specified how long it will take for day one, or I guess it wouldn't be a day one release, but for new games to come to Xbox Game Pass Standard. But essentially what this is doing is say you pay more to get Ultimate and get your day one releases, or you pay less and you don't get day one releases, which is kind of crazy. And then last but not least, PC Game Pass subscribers will continue to get day one games, and they have a little bit of a price increase. I think it's like $2 a month. So they've kind of restructured their tiers, got rid of, day one games on one of those tiers, which has been one of their biggest marketing ploys. And Techtic, what do you think about this?
So there's a couple of things that I want to say. First and foremost, I am not surprised that the Game Pass price, just like any other subscription service, eventually goes up a smidge. Not surprising at all. Honestly, it's expected.
And I mean, especially because you are getting things like, you look at what's coming out in the next year. There's the new Indiana Jones game. There's Call of Duty games coming to Game Pass, including the new one. Well, day one if you're on Ultimate. There's all of the new games that we basically saw in the Xbox Game Showcase that blew us away. That's all coming out in the next 2 years. So it kind of makes sense that their price will go up. I mean, the price of every subscription service is going up. I'm not happy about it, but that's just what it is.
The timing is a little bit shady because they know that Call of Duty is a big flagship IP. And if you don't have the Ultimate version, you're not going to have access to that day one. And they're rolling this out literally right before Call of Duty drops. And so it seems sort of like they're like, okay, everyone's going to do Ultimate, and then they're just going to forget to do Ultimate, and they'll not go on the Standard, all of the Call of Duty fans. Which, that's kind of annoying because it's just sort of human to do it that way, because it's difficult to then go in and change things because we're all lazy. And people who aren't all aboard the Call of Duty franchise are probably just going to go, okay, I'm going to bump down the Standard to keep my price as low as possible. If this wasn't a thing, and I don't like that part. It seems shady, but as I said, it's a $3 bump. It's not terrible. And it is the way of capitalism.
So I do have a few more like in-depth thoughts. So I was following very closely the Microsoft acquisition of Activision and basically that entire court case, because as you guys know, there was the court case basically trying to block the acquisition or at least investigate it on the stand that would create a monopoly, you know, anti-monopolization laws and all that kind of stuff. Microsoft at one point in that court case had said that just because like Call of Duty and Activision games would come to Game Pass didn't mean that there would be a price increase and that they would come to the service day one without a price increase. So that, like the timing of that and the fact that they said that in court feels like a little, and as a consumer, like, I don't know, I feel like you have to at least give a 2-year grace period if you're going to say something in court to be like, actually, we're going to walk that back and do something completely different. And then I think the other thing that's going to be super convoluted and confusing is that literally since the inception of Game Pass, Microsoft has really hung their hat on this whole, you know, all games are coming from Microsoft Studios day one to Game Pass. And especially after we saw the showcase and they literally said day one Game Pass over and over and over and over and over again. I feel like this now kind of muddies the marketing waters. Like they're going to have to relook at how they advertise that, because you can't say game one or day one Game Pass and have a tier of Game Pass that it doesn't come to.
They're just going to say day one for Ultimate. They're
Right.
just going to change their shtick.
But I think it's also just a little convoluted, misleading, confusing that has been their marketing strategy for so long, just to kind of walk that back and be like, actually not for everybody. And I know their goal here is to get everybody to go to Ultimate, but at that point, like, I don't understand why you don't just make Ultimate the only tier. Like, just make it just Game Pass. Because we also see, you know, we talked about, I think last week or the week before, how they're bringing Xbox, you know, cloud gaming to Amazon Fire Sticks. Clearly, their plan is to kind of be ubiquitous, have cloud gaming everywhere. Ultimate includes cloud gaming. Like, at this point, just say Game Pass, one tier, that's it.
What is really the difference between day one and not day one? Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days?
They have not clarified that yet. And that's another thing I would have to see, because like if it's just like a month-long, you know, delay to play a new game, then maybe it would be worth it for people to take the cheaper plan and just wait. But if it's going to be a year, 2 years, I mean, I'm just looking at, you know, I'm using PlayStation Plus as like an indicator here, but you didn't really see games come to PlayStation Plus, a lot of first party games. And the reason why I have to use PlayStation is because Xbox really didn't have a lot of first party games in the last generation. But it took PlayStation a while for those games to hit their service or even to go on sale sometimes. And so it's concerning, just you market your service and your plan as, you know, one way. And now will this change? Will people have to wait 6 months? And will this cause confusion then for your consumers, say parents who might be buying Game Pass for their kids and they're getting the wrong one, and now you're just causing a ton of just headaches, and I don't understand.
Is this going to hurt indie developers? And now let me explain why I'm asking this question. So when you have these, you know, these showcases and what have you, hype is built up for a lot of these various games. And then if you have it drop day one, all of these indie games that you kind of just saw in a showcase, you're going to wait for them to become no longer day one, quote unquote, but you're going to have forgotten about them, right? Because they're not this household name like Halo, Call of Duty, etc. And so is it going to then hurt those games and they're not going to get the exposure they would have had otherwise?
That's a really good point, and honestly, one that I hadn't thought of, because in my mind, I was just thinking, like, does day one release only apply to Microsoft developer games? But you're right. I mean, they have a lot of partnerships with indie studios, and they call those day one releases too. So that very well could hurt those indie developers, because especially with like a live service game, if you're an indie studio or a smaller studio doing some experimental online multiplayer thing, you want to get as large of a player base as possible. And if day one includes all of their outside partnerships as well, and not just, this delay isn't just applied to Microsoft. Now your player base, if you're the small new multiplayer game, isn't going to be as large because you have this whole tier of people who won't have access to your game for an extended period of time. I don't know. It's also just weird. And like the parity too between console players and PC, because PC Game Pass, there's only one tier of that. And I mean, granted, Ultimate gives you access to Game Pass on console and PC and cloud gaming. But if you just have PC Game Pass, on PC, you still get all of your games day one, and really nothing has changed with your service. There's no delays. You just have the upcharge that Ultimate did. They're not getting rid of your subscription tier. They're not adding a different subscription tier at the lower price point to delay the games. And it just feels very strange too when you look at the disparity between console strategy for Game Pass and PC strategy for Game Pass. I don't know. It's very confusing. And I feel like it doesn't necessarily bode well for the future of these types of services. And I know this is what people have been saying all along since the inception of Game Pass, is that ultimately, while it's consumer friendly now, kind of like Netflix and all the streaming services that we have for movies and TV, eventually prices just go up. The content sometimes is great, but sometimes you just get a lot of poop, and it starts to become almost as bad as like cable, or maybe you might as well just buy a game depending on how expensive Game Pass becomes. Like if you look at how many games you play in a year, what is the value proposition there if it becomes more and more and more expensive and you're not even getting the day one games if you're at a different tier? I don't know. It's very weird.
Indeed.
Sorry, I kind of went on a rant there, but this has just been something that seems, just confusing, and given their marketing strategy and how staunchly they've been drilling in day one, it just seems like a weird thing to walk back, and something that will cause consumer unrest, or at least, make you kind of doubt Microsoft's future of Game Pass for a while. So if you want to get your Game Pass service at its current rate, I guess stack them while you can. That's what I've done. I think they're trying to limit to the amount of months now you can stack. At the moment, you can still stack 3 years, but I think after that, like at some point I wanted to say, I read that it was going to be like down to you can only stack 12 months. So stack them while you got them, I guess, and play what you can while you can, because we don't know the future.
Play what you can while you can.
All right, so before we dig into our last movie trailer, we are going to take a quick break. But before we do, I would be remiss if I did not call out our fantastic Patreon producer, Mr. Steven Keller.
Whoop, whoop.
He has been with us for a very long time, helping to keep the show running. He gets all sorts of goodies and perks. He'll actually be coming on the show in short order because I believe he is due for a guest spot. He gets to come on the show every quarter. He also gets to vote in our quiz, which unfortunately we won't have a quiz this week, but he gets to vote on them when we do. He also gets access to our secret segment and secret vlogs, only for Patreon subscribers. In addition, he just gets to hear us tell him he's a super cool guy all the time, which who wouldn't want that? Because he is a super cool guy. If you're interested in being as super cool as Mr. Steven Keller, you can head on over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast, where you can find all of the different information on our tiers that you can help support the show at. All right, now we're going to take a break.
Let's see, Alex. What do you think of Jaws, which is at 97% Rotten Tomatoes?
I find it to be anti-shark propaganda. What do you feel about the Entourage movie, which is at a meager 33%?
I think they finally got Hollywood right. How about It Follows, 97%?
Worse than your parents giving you the sex is evil talk. How do you feel about Juno, which is at 94%?
That would be a movie that celebrates a teenage homewrecker. How about Bewitched at 25%?
Best television adaptation ever put to film. How do you feel about American Hustle at a towering 93%?
Overwrought awards bait. Righteous Kill, 19%.
The movie that Michael Mann wishes he had made when he created Heat.
Sounds about right. I'm Julio.
I'm Alex, and we are the Contrarians.
As you can tell, our thing is that we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine,
regardless of what we really feel.
Find us on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn,
Facebook, Twitter, we're everywhere.
And we're back, and we're going to talk about Captain America Brave New World, in which Harrison Ford joins the squad. He's playing Thaddeus Ross, and in the comic books, Thaddeus ultimately becomes, drumroll please, the Red Hulk, and that's awesome. And now, one thing that I want to talk about this movie is, so Thaddeus has been, up until now, portrayed by William Hurt, but unfortunately, due to his death, Harrison Ford, R.I.P., has to step in, which, like, I really wish he would have had the opportunity to like, at least be Red Hulk just a little bit. That's, like, huge bummer, but time gets everybody. So we have Harrison Ford. He's going to be the Red Hulk, and we've got Sam playing Captain America in this. And I know, Nerdbomber, you're anti-Captain America, but, like, we like Sam, right? He's just a normal guy fighting, doing his best.
So I was going to say, I hate Steve Rogers, but this iteration of Captain America, I think I might be able to get behind, because they literally say at one point in this trailer, like, you are not Steve Rogers. And he's like, yeah, I know. Badassery ensues. And, like, that's what I want out of my Captain America. And so maybe my interest in this character is now renewed.
So in this trailer, we see a lot of strife between Thaddeus and Sam, and you can sort of see the direction it's going. It's, you know, he wants to kind of control Sam, but Sam's going to do what's right, regardless of what this military general wants him to do, and that's going to cause basically him...
Isn't Thaddeus, like, running for election? Is he, like, becoming president?
I'm not sure what he's running for. Some kind of office. It's not explicitly said in this, but
he is, in fact, the new president of the United States, so he's not a military general.
So Thaddeus is president of the United States, and there's going to be strife between them, and he's ultimately going to take matters in his own hands. Likely, after he gets shot, he's going to be done with some experimental procedures to give him radiation exposure and ultimately make him the Red Hulk. A little bit more information about the Red Hulk that I want to make you guys aware of. Not only does he have Bruce Banner's strength, but if he gets angry enough, he gets hot. Like, his skin generates heat, and, like, he can, like, do nuclear blast. And so he is a really, really interesting, really cool character with capabilities well beyond that of the Hulk's. He has the same regenerative abilities, strength, and firepower, basically. And so this has a lot of potential for some really cool combat scenes, and I'm quite excited about it.
I think I'm mostly just excited. I know we already sort of touched on this, but I'm excited to see a new iteration of Captain America, because, pardon me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Sam has superpowers, correct? He just has his really cool wingsuit.
You're correct. He has, like, a little bit of, like, weird telepathicness with his bird, but, like, other than that, he's just a normal guy with his suit.
And so, to me, you said I don't like action movies, but I'm watching this, and this looks like the type of action movie that I'm interested in. There's a little bit more of, like, a spy, political thriller aspect here. And honestly, this is probably one of the first times that I've been intrigued by a Marvel movie in a while, because I feel like if you basically took out the background that Captain America is this figurehead from the MCU, and you just introduced me in this new movie as, okay, this is this guy, normal guy, who just has really cool tech, and, you know, he's kind of this vigilante, but he joins forces with, like, the president to become a more official, you know, acting member of the military, and then there's, like, shenaniganery that ensues. Aside from the Red Hulk showing up at the end, if I'm watching this trailer, it doesn't speak to me like an MCU movie almost at all. And honestly, I kind of like it. It's getting to the point where there's too much magic in MCU movies. And I know we just talked about the Agatha Harkness series last week, and, like, obviously she's a witch and it's magic. But, like, by magic, I mean, like, multi-dimensional, you know, so much interconnected stuff. This actually just feels like something that I would have seen at the beginning of the MCU, where it's kind of like a standalone movie, and you don't need to know, like, oh, Doctor Strange is out here and there's, like, a different version of this character over here and people disappeared for a while over here. Like, this feels like something I could watch, and it could also just stand on its own as, like, a political action thriller type movie. And that's kind of how the MCU started. And if we're finally circling back to that, I'm really excited. because I feel like maybe that could renew my interest in the MCU.
Do you think that Harrison Ford is too old for this role? And I don't mean president of the United States, but
I was gonna say our options right now are pretty old, so this speaks very true to life. I don't know. I feel like we keep trotting out Harrison Ford, and I have no problem with Harrison Ford as an actor. We do keep trotting him out in action roles, though. Like we brought him back as Indiana Jones, and now we're putting him in an MCU movie as a Hulk character. And like I think where Harrison Ford has shined the most is, oh, what was that Apple movie about the psychologist? Like I felt like he should be looking at roles like that now instead of maybe like action movie type roles. But Harrison Ford is a legend, so if he wants to take on an MCU position, like good for him, I guess. Like, yes, I do think he's getting a little bit too old, but also like it is, I guess, poignant. However you feel about politics, you look at our options in general, whoever you prefer, they're both old as hell. So Harrison Ford is at least fitting the bill if you just wanted an old as hell guy in there.
Nailed it. Okay, so we'll put this one on the docket for you. You got an action movie summer coming up. Or you got an action movie year coming up.
I'm telling you, like, I don't dislike action movies. I think I just dislike the action movies where it's like, bro, yeah, I'm super bro. I'm out here being a super bro, beating like 10 people up with my bare hands, being a super bro. Like, I can't with that. But stuff like this, stuff like Gladiators 2, like even in Gladiators 2, not to like pivot back to an earlier topic, but like they show that it's not just him one-on-one all the time in combat taking down a bunch of dudes. Like he's out there with a squad of people working together. Like he's not this superhuman person. I just don't believe the superhuman, like stereotypical lead role in a lot of action movies, and I can't with that. But like give me a more realistic action movie and I'm here all day.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe twice on Sundays. Who knows?
Well, folks, look forward to Harrison Red Hulk Ford. It's coming sooner than you think.
Sooner than you think.
And so with that, we're going to roll into the best part of the show, and that is, what are you up to Wednesday? Where we talk about what we've been up to, and we bring it to you on Wednesday. And I'm going to start with what I have been up to. So we started watching Season 3 of Sonic Prime. And I gotta say, if you think you're too old for Sonic Prime, you're incorrect. The storytelling in this is absolutely phenomenal. And Season 3 had dropped recently. It's fully released. And this is the put the bow on the show. We're at the climax, baby. It's happening. And I gotta say, Season 3 does not disappoint. I don't want to spoil it if anyone hasn't watched it, but there's a lot of your standard Sonic tropes where we can save the day with friendship, because that's just, if you know and love Sonic, that's what you're going to get. And on top of that, there's a lot of like...
I would say, though, the friendship theme, like, they're doing it well. It's not overly tacky. Like, it's more like teamwork. Sometimes in shows like that, especially like, I don't know, when you say the power of friendship, it can get a little like cliche, but I feel like it's working. Sonic
always does it well. I'm a big Sonic fan. And on top of that, they're giving characters that are kind of just kicked off to the side a lot of like badass opportunities. Like Amy Rose has been freaking shining like amazingly. Really in this whole show, she's kind of like the best character of all of them. And I can't complain. No notes. Like they're doing great stuff for Amy, and I can even see it to the point where she maybe gets her own game, right? Because we've seen Shadow get his own game. We've seen Sonic get his own game. Knuckles has even had a huge, like, cool hunting for gems part of other games. And, like, Amy, I feel like always falls to the wayside. So it's time to give her her time in the limelight. And this show is setting it up perfectly. So my recommendation is to check out that show. And then the other thing is, because the weather has been gorgeous, we always love to say it when we do it because it's a common occurrence. We had ourselves another campfire, roasting marshmallows, cooking dogs, the whole nine. And the best thing of all, we had s'mores. So that's all I've got. And now I'm going to kick it over to Nerdbomber.
All right, so one of the biggest things that I did this past weekend was Pokemon Go Fest 2024.
Oh, this was actually fun.
So we've played Pokemon Go for a long time now, but we haven't necessarily participated in like crazy public, and I don't mean crazy like bad crazy, but like very busy public raiding or anything like that. We haven't done a community day before in a public place. If anything, we've always just like remoted in elsewhere because, it's difficult to always necessarily find a crowd of people. But this weekend we actually went out, found a really cool town that had a bunch of people playing, did a bunch of raids, walked a ton, and we caught a bunch of Ultra Beasts, which was super cool. I really liked, a lot of the Ultra Beasts had come out throughout the week prior to the community day really kicking off. And some of them were like region locked, and we were dumb and used remote raid passes because we were like, oh my God, they're region locked. We won't be able to see them. But they did a really good job in community day and like Pokemon Go Fest day, basically making sure that everything rotated through. You had a chance, no matter, the fact that you were on the other side of the world from where this region locked Pokemon was, to get it. They had a lot of shinies. I don't know. I thought it was just really cool. We haven't necessarily participated in a raid, like sequence of raids, I guess, quite like that before. And it just was a really cool experience. I would do it again. Would I do it again if it was like a 90-degree day like it was? It was really hot. I'm not going to lie to you. I was very sweaty. It was gross. But it was worth it. I thought it was a really cool time. And then the other thing that I want to talk about was I started and finished a Blake Crouch book. And I feel like I've talked about Blake Crouch books before in the past. Techtic actually introduced me to him. He used to write like crime thrillers, but he's since kind of like deviated into the sci-fi thriller realm of books. And I've read pretty much everything by him by this point, except I had this one that had just been on my to be read pile for a while and I never got around to it. Well, I finally did. And I read Upgrade. And the idea of Upgrade is essentially it's a futuristic world in which gene editing has become a widespread phenomenon, so people can edit the genes of themselves, crops, animals, etc., to give them specific, features and essentially upgrade them. And as a society, this practice of gene editing is banned because typically what ends up happening is, as explained in the book, bad things happen. Like you think you're making a bee more productive, but then they kill off another species and then a famine happens because that species is needed to pollinate something else or something along those lines. Or you give yourself an upgrade and edit one gene, but then it causes destability in some other system of your body because that gene interacts with another gene a specific way, and then you end up like dying or having a weird mutation. So the practice of upgrading oneself is banned, but the main character, who works basically in I forget what the name of the agency was, but they're basically, the FBI for gene editing, and they're making sure that nobody is, editing genes. They're busting up illicit black market labs, etc. And he gets exposed on the job to something that upgrades him. And it kind of sets the series of events off where the government thinks that he maybe edited himself. So then he's on the run, but also trying to solve the mystery of like what is happening, why this is happening, and how to prevent it from happening to other people. And it's maybe not the best succinct explanation that I'm giving you, but it was a very fast-paced, very interesting book. I really like science. I really like thinking about the future of, what could happen in these weird, like semi-realistic scenarios. Like, obviously, gene editing is not real now, but if it ever did become real, like it's not that crazy to think about as opposed to other sci-fi books, which are like, we're in a black hole wormhole doing crazy stuff with aliens. Like it's a little bit more of a grounded sci-fi novel and a lot of thriller aspects from, I think, Blake Crouch's time writing, crime thrillers. So if you're interested, it's a very approachable sci-fi novel, in my opinion. There is some like science thrown around, but I think they try to do a good job, or Blake Crouch does a really good job, I think, of, I don't want to say dumbing it down, but making it, again, very approachable to the average person, because I don't have any experience with genes DNA, anything like that. Like, I briefly learned it in biology, like everybody else, but even in college, I didn't really touch that stuff again. But I never really felt lost at any point in time. But it was a pretty good read, very exciting, fast-paced stuff, and a good pool read if you're into that kind of thing. So
Sounds like one I would check out.
yeah, I have the Kindle version, so I can slap it on your Kindle and you can read it in the pool.
Wow.
All right. Well, Techtic, do you have anything else to add for our wonderful listeners today?
I do not. This is a short one. This is quick and concise and to the point.
I do have to say, props to Illegal. Every time we do this without him and we have to like introduce the topics and explain what's going on, I don't say that he's unappreciated here, but I always recognize how difficult it is to summarize things.
He gives that intro razzle dazzle too.
He does. We didn't do any intro razzle dazzle.
We'll give outro razzle dazzle. Try talking with minimal tongue movement because that was this episode. I hope you're impressed.
Oh,
I hurt my tongue.
okay. Well, I thought you sounded great. So
Thanks.
for all things considered, I thought you did a great job. And I hope we did a great job filling Illegal's big footsteps. He will be back next week.
But
It
in the
will be great.
meantime, stay safe and keep on podcasting.